I really wanted to play, I suppose. It was just something at the time, hearing, you know, a lot of rock and roll records in the house, and, you know, I had other brothers who played, and it just seemed like there was a guitar lying around the house. You'd pick it up and try and get a couple of notes out of it, you know, or try and emulate what you heard. I really never sort of learnt, like in a technical sense, like in a, you know, theory or anything. It was just something, you know, I'd look at some of my brothers, look at the positions where their finger was, and you would hope that you would get it right, you know. And you know, Malcolm, my brother, he was pretty much the same. And I think because you know, the two of us are little fellas, and you know, you would try and make chords and stuff. If you were a little guy and you're playing a big chord, you got like a bit of a stretch, you know. And you see some guys, because they've got big long fingers, like an Eric Clapton or something, you know, they've got this big finger stretch, you know, almost, it looks better, their fingers for piano or something, you know. And when you're a little guy, you know, you sort of got to try and compensate, you know. And Malcolm and myself, if it was a major, like a major A chord, we would do, so we would little chords like that. Well, I think with guitar, because at the first I wasn't really that much interested in guitar as like solo guitar, you know. But I think it's when a bit later on, you know, started hearing some of the blues stuff, people like Elmer James, and for rock and roll, you know, obviously Chuck Berry, you know. You want a bit of Chuck? I'll do my best. And then you get that Chuck thing, and that was probably, I think, for rock and roll, and especially at the time, it was probably, you know, everyone's, you know, the bulk of people's idols, you know. And other people I would hear later on were like blues guys, you know, the Freddie Kings, and, you know, like with the, I think he had the sort of single note thing, you know, and which you see people like Clapton do, and then of course too, there's probably for the, you know, the space freaks, you got you know, Hendrix, you know, with the sort of kind of, you know, to me it was a little bit kind of, I suppose, a surf sound in a way. You know, it had that, you know, the Hendrix thing had that kind of surf thing, but with a sort of, you know, probably a modern day 60s twist, you know, with all the, you know, the freaking out with the whammy bar and the wow pedals and stuff. But I'll try it. I'm not a great Hendrix player, but I'll try a little. But he used to do a lot. You would hear it in people like John Lee Hooker and things where they... You know, so if you had it like the King Bee thing, it was like... So it was just more the groove of it, and you could sort of say, well, I can busk through that, you know. So, and probably in my case, there was a lot of, you know, was a lot of busking, because even when we first started, you know, and we playing clubs and bars, you know, Malcolm, he had more experience of playing around, and you know, we just do half a dozen, you know, rock and roll tunes, and you know, except probably with a lot more volume, you know, and played them as you know, everyone used to say, you know, is that a Chuck Berry song you were playing up there, you know? And you go, yeah, and they go, didn't sound like it. Well, if you look, it's got a kind of devil, see little horns, it's got a little red devil, you know, and if you would see on a lot of, I suppose, people with eclectic guitars, you know, they would sort of go, You know, one of the big collector items for a lot of years was the Les Paul Gibsons, you know, with the single cutaway, and this was all solid, and but a very heavy guitar. And if you're a little guy like me, you know, they can give you hip displacement, you know. And I remember once picking up one and trying one out at a gig, and you know, that's what sort of happened. You know, you get a big bruise on your hip. And because really the only way you could play them was, you know, sort of hanging down real low to try and get a balance out of them, you know. And so I always thought the SG was a lighter guitar because you could just pick it up like this. Well, I suppose people, you know, with a, you know, of an average medium height can sort of, you know, when they bend it, they best bend the string, you know. But with me, it's like I've got to sort of go. You know, you have to sort of lean into it, you know. And a lot of people, when you're playing on stage, a lot of people say, "Oh, you move." There's a lot of movement, you know. But it's actually me trying to get around the fretboard, you know. So, you know, or if you do like a double, you know, it's just, I suppose, a thing of nature, you know, when you're playing live, you know. And then sometimes it's the movement itself that helps you get, you know, actually get the note, or you think, you think of ways of trying to, you know, go, well, I've got to get that note. How am I going to get out? And like with myself, you know, your knees sort of crunch up together, and you sort of go. You know, it's almost like a virgin there. You know, if you had to get a, you know, an effect or something, you would think of something, you know, that you could do with a guitar, like in, if you hear the song Jailbreak, you know, there's like, in the middle there's a, you know, guitar break with the vocal thing, you know, when Bon, he was singing, and, you know, he would do this heartbeat thing, and then he would do a spotlight, and I'd go. You know, you make a rude noise, and then you get sirens, you know, and rifles firing, you know, so you got that. You would try and think of a thing with how to do it on the guitar without it sounding like, you know, somebody had put on a, you know, an effect on it or something. So, and we always thought it was better too, for, you know, because you were thinking about what you were doing. You try to do what's there off the record, but because I think, you know, we got little, we're lucky in the form that we got little, you know, breaks and stuff that you can sort of play, and it's just years of playing that you built up things, you know, between you and an audience, you know. You get, and I suppose, and from the early days picking up things, you know, you would watch when I would watch somebody like Chuck Berry or something, you know, he would always, you know, especially if he was singing, you know, he always had little raps that he had going with an audience, you know. He'd go, "Olé," and the audience go, "Olé," you know, and you go, "Olé," and they go, "Olé," you know, and he had all of that. You know, he'd just go like this, and the audience would respond. So I would try and I thought, well, Chuck can do it, maybe I can do it with the guitar, so I go, you know, and if the audience went, "Hey," you go, you know, and you sort of build it up, so you get like. Well, Malcolm and myself, it was, you know, we would, you know, I got it mainly from watching him, you know, and he was always sort of. And if you hear a track like one of the new ones, Stiff Upper Lip, you got to. As a kid, I would sit and I thought it was so clever. You see, I thought, well, you know, I could sit and knock these little things together, and you were thinking it was, you know, it was a good exercise for you, and you could sort of practice away with them. And then, you know, even in the track Thunderstruck, when it was the same thing. It'd come up like a, you know, it started like a one-handed, you know. So it started that way, you know, and then you'd end up, you know. we used to have a funny thing. It used to seem after 6 o'clock at night when the sun went down, or whatever time the sun would go down, is when suddenly there's a, you know, it's a bit vampire-y in a way. The sound would start to fall, you know, start to fall into place. You know, what sounded like you know, a shambles in the morning sounded like something very together at night.